Da ogni posto in cui si possa ricavare del denaro.
E quanto tempo le occorre per trovare 10 milioni?
Remember when you were flipping through channels on Saturday morning and stumbled onto something so bizarre you weren't sure if you'd accidentally eaten some of your mom's suspicious casserole from last Tuesday? The 80s gave us some truly unhinged television that made perfect sense at the time, but looks absolutely bonkers in retrospect. Today we're counting down 11 sitcoms that were so strange, so wonderfully bizarre, that they've burned themselves into the collective memory of every kid who grew up in that decade, leaving us all asking the same question. Did that actually happen, or did I dream it? Number 11, Small Wonder. Kicking off our list is Small Wonder, the show that asked the question nobody was asking. What if your neighbor had a robot daughter and just decided not to tell anyone? This sitcom aired from 1985 to 1989 in first-run syndication, bypassing networks entirely and going straight to local stations. Think of it as the direct-to-video of television, except people actually watched it. The premise was simple but deeply weird. Ted Lawson, played by Dick Christie, is a robotics engineer who builds an android daughter named VC, which stood for Voice Input Child Identicant. He and his wife Joan, played by Marla Pennington, decide to raise this robot as their daughter, alongside their actual human son Jamie, played by Jerry Superin. Oh, and they keep the whole robot thing secret from everyone except their nosy neighbors, the Brindles. VC, played by Tiffany Brissett, had superhuman strength, could access computer databases with her mind, and spoke in a monotone that made Siri sound emotionally available. She wore the same red and white dress in nearly every episode, had a charging cabinet in her bedroom, and would malfunction at the worst possible times, like during school plays or birthday parties. Here's what made Small Wonder truly bizarre. The show played it completely straight. This wasn't a sci-fi comedy leaning into the absurdity. It was a family sitcom that just happened to feature a robot child, and everyone treated it like a slightly quirky but otherwise normal situation. The laugh track would fire off like someone was getting paid per chuckle. The show also featured Harriet Brindle, played by Emily Schulman, the bratty neighbor girl who constantly tried to expose VCI as a robot, but always failed because apparently adults in the 80s had zero pattern recognition skills. Small Wonder became a cult classic, not because it was good, but because it was so earnestly strange. The show ran for 96 episodes. Tiffany Brissett eventually became a nurse. Small Wonder remains a time capsule of 80s weirdness that couldn't exist today without being satirical commentary on AI. Number 10, Out of This World. Coming in. At number 10 is Out of This World, a sitcom that aired from 1987 to 1991, and somehow convinced audiences that a teenage girl with superpowers living in a small California town was perfectly normal suburban entertainment. The show followed Evie Garland, played by Maureen Flanagan, a seemingly ordinary teenager who discovers on her 13th birthday that her father is an alien from the planet Antarius. Her mother, Donna, played by Donna Pescow, had married this alien named Troy during a vacation, and after he returned to his home planet, she decided to raise their half-alien daughter alone. Because apparently in the 80s, interplanetary custody arrangements weren't complicated. Here's where it gets weird. Evie never actually meets her father in person. Instead, Troy communicates through a glowing cube in her bedroom that projects his voice and occasionally his face. He was voiced by Burt Reynolds for the first 3 seasons because nothing says family sitcom like the bandit talking through a glowing box. But the real hook was Evie's power. She could stop time by touching her index fingers together. Just tap them and boom, everyone around her freezes while she moves freely. Need to fix a mistake? Stop time. Want to avoid an awkward conversation? Stop time. Running late for school? You guessed it. Stop time. The show was created by John Borman, who also created Mork and Mindy, so he clearly had a thing for aliens living among humans. What made the show memorably strange wasn't just the premise, it was how casually everyone accepted it. Evie's best friend Lindsay, played by Christina Nigra, knew about the powers and just rolled with it. Mayor Kyle Applegate, played by Doug McClure, was constantly getting frozen mid-sentence and never questioned why his teenage employee kept zoning out. Out of This World ran for 4 seasons and 96 episodes. Looking back, it feels like a fever dream, a show where a girl could stop time, but mostly used this incredible power to deal with typical teenager problems. It's the television equivalent of having a genie and wishing for a nice sandwich. Number 9. Wizards and Warriors. Sliding into number 9 is Wizards and Warriors, a show so weird that even 80s kids who watched everything on Saturday morning have trouble remembering it existed. This fantasy sitcom aired on CBS for exactly 8 episodes in 1983 before the network mercy killed it and pretended the whole thing never happened. Here's the pitch. What if we took the sword and sorcery boom that Conan the Barbarian started and turned it into a primetime comedy? Yeah, Wizards and Warriors followed Prince Eric Greystone, played by Jeff Conaway, fresh off his Grease and Taxi fame, as he battled the evil wizard Vector, played by Clive Revel, for control of the kingdom of Camarand. The show tried to blend Monty Python-style humor with genuine fantasy adventure, and the result pleased absolutely nobody. Fantasy fans wanted serious world-building and epic quests. Comedy fans wanted actual jokes. What they got was a show that couldn't decide if it was a parody or a sincere attempt at bringing Dungeons & Dragons to television. The cast included Walter Olkevich as Marco the Apprentice Wizard, Duncan Regehr as Prince Dirk Blackpool, and Randy Brooks as Princess Ariel. They were all clearly trying their best with material that ranged from campy fun to genuinely confusing. One episode would feature slapstick comedy with pratfalls and silly voices. The next would attempt serious drama about political intrigue and betrayal. CBS had high hopes, giving it a Saturday night time slot, and decent production values with elaborate costumes and practical effects. But in 1983, audiences weren't ready for a fantasy sitcom. Networks didn't know how to market it, and viewers didn't know what to make of it. The show's cancellation after 8 episodes was so swift that some markets never even aired all the produced episodes. Jeff Conaway continued acting until his death in 2011. Duncan Regehr became a successful character actor. Wizards and Warriors remains a fascinating footnote, a bold experiment that arrived too early. In today's world of Game of Thrones, it might have found an audience. Number 8. Mr. Merlin. At number 8, we have Mr. Merlin, a sitcom that asked the question literally nobody was asking. What if the legendary wizard Merlin was living in modern-day San Francisco, running an auto repair shop? CBS aired this bizarre show from 1981 to 1982, and honestly, the fact that it lasted even that long feels like magic. The premise was aggressively weird. Merlin, played by Barnard Hughes, who you might remember from Tron, is the actual Merlin from Arthurian legend. He's been alive for 1,500 years, and he's currently disguised as Max Merlin, a mild-mannered garage owner. His mission is to find a worthy apprentice to train in the ways of magic, and he chooses Zachary Rogers, played by Clark Brandon, a teenage grease monkey who works at his garage. Yes, the legendary wizard who counseled King Arthur decided his next protege should be a teenager from the Bay Area who's really good at changing oil. That's the show. Each episode followed a similar pattern. Zachary would face some teenage problem, like asking a girl to prom or dealing with a bully, and Merlin would teach him a magical spell to help. But like any good mentor, Merlin insisted that magic should only be used responsibly, which meant Zachary would inevitably misuse the spell, cause chaos, and learn a valuable lesson by the end of 22 minutes. The show also featured Elisha Cook Jr. as Leo Samuels, Merlin's cynical employee who knew about the magic, but mostly just wanted to fix cars and not deal with supernatural nonsense. What made Mr. Merlin truly strange was its tone. The show couldn't decide if it wanted to be a magical adventure series, or a workplace comedy, or a coming-of-age story. The magic effects were cheap even by 80s standards, usually just sparkles and dissolves. The show lasted 22 episodes before CBS pulled the plug. Mr. Merlin aired during the same era as other magical sitcoms like Mork and Mindy and The Greatest American Hero, shows that actually worked because they committed to their premise. Number 7. Automan. Coming in at number 7 is Automan, a show that looked at Tron's groundbreaking special effects and thought, yeah, we can do that on a television budget. Spoiler alert, they could not. This sci-fi action sitcom aired on ABC from 1983 to 1984 and remains one of the most visually ambitious failures in television history. The premise was pure 80s wish fulfillment. Walter Niebescher, played by Daisy Arnaz Jr., yes, Lucy and Desi's son, is a nerdy police computer programmer who creates Automan, a holographic crime-fighting superhero that he can project into the real world through his computer. Automan, played by Chuck Wagner, was essentially a computer program with a glowing neon bodysuit who could materialize vehicles, weapons, and gadgets out of thin light. Oh, and he had a sidekick named Cursor, a glowing polyhedron that could draw anything Automan needed, from helicopters to sports cars to giant walls. Cursor was basically Microsoft Paint if it had a personality and could create real objects. Here's what made Automan weird. The show took itself completely seriously. This wasn't a campy romp like The Greatest American Hero. It was a straight-up action show that happened to feature a glowing computer man and his flying geometry sidekick fighting crime in Los Angeles. The special effects were genuinely impressive for television at the time. But here's the problem. Those effects were expensive. Really expensive. Each episode reportedly cost around $1 million, which was astronomical for 80s TV. ABC quickly realized they'd greenlit a show with a movie-sized budget and television-sized ratings. After 13 episodes, the network pulled the plug. The show also suffered from logic problems. Automan could only exist at night because he required too much power during the day, which meant Los Angeles apparently only had crime after dark. Automan has developed a cult following over the years, with fans appreciating its ambition and memorably weird premise. Number 6, Manimal. At number 6, we have Manimal, and look, if you don't remember this show, you probably think we're making it up. This NBC action series aired for exactly 8 episodes in 1983, but its legacy of weirdness has far outlasted its brief run. The premise was magnificently bonkers. Dr. Jonathan Chase, played by Simon McCorkindale, is a wealthy professor who can transform into any animal at will, and he uses this ability to fight crime alongside Detective Brooke McKenzie, played by Melody Anderson. Every episode, Chase would face some criminal threat, transform into an animal, solve the case, and transform back. Simple, right? Here's what made Manimal truly bizarre. The show only had the budget for 2 transformation sequences, a hawk and a Black Panther, which they reused in virtually every episode. Audiences quickly noticed that no matter what the situation called for, Chase would always turn into one of these 2 animals. Need to track a suspect? Black Panther. Need an aerial view? Hawk. Need to infiltrate a small space? Black Panther again somehow. The transformation sequences themselves were genuinely impressive for television. Created by the same team that did An American Werewolf in London, they featured elaborate prosthetics and practical effects that showed Chase's face morphing into animal features before completing the change. These sequences were so expensive that the show literally couldn't afford to show him turning into anything else. NBC had no idea what to do with Manimal. They marketed it as an action show, but the transformation gimmick made it feel more like fantasy. Critics savaged the show. TV Guide called it one of the worst shows of the decade. After 8 episodes, NBC canceled it, making Manimal one of the quickest cancellations in network history. But here's the thing. Manimal became a cultural touchstone, precisely because it was so weird. It's been referenced in everything from The Simpsons to Family Guy to Community. Manimal proves that sometimes a show is so weird that cancellation doesn't kill it. Instead, it immortalizes it. Number 5. Misfits of Science. Sliding into number 5 is Misfits of Science, a superhero team sitcom that NBC aired from 1985 to 1986. This show tried to beat the X-Men to live-action television by a couple of decades, and while it failed commercially, it succeeded in being memorably weird. The premise mixed teenage wish fulfillment with actual science, sort of. The show followed a team of people with superpowers who worked for a scientific think tank in Los Angeles. Dr. Billy Hayes, played by Dean Paul Martin, yes, Dean Martin's son, was the team leader who could shrink himself to tiny size. Dr. Elvin Lincoln, played by Kevin Peter Hall, was a 7-foot-tall man who could shoot electricity from his hands and shrink down to normal human height. Johnny Bukowski, played by Mark Thomas Miller, was a rock musician who'd been hit by lightning and gained electrical powers. And Gloria Dinallo, played by Courtney Cox in her first major role, was a teenage telekinetic. Yes, that Courtney Cox. Before Friends made her a household name, she was fighting crime with a team of scientific misfits while moving objects with her mind. What made Misfits of Science weird wasn't just the premise, it was the tone. The show couldn't decide if it wanted to be a comedy, an action series, or a teenage drama, so it tried to be all three simultaneously. The show also featured Dick Butkus, the legendary Chicago Bears linebacker, as their government liaison, because apparently NBC thought what this superhero show needs is a football player. NBC gave Misfits of Science a decent shot, ordering 17 episodes, but ratings were inconsistent. Kids found it too complicated. Adults found it too juvenile. The show fell into the dreaded gap between demographics and was canceled after one season. Looking back, Misfits of Science was ahead of its time. A diverse superhero team dealing with personal issues while fighting crime, that's every successful superhero show from the past 15 years. All right, we're about halfway through the countdown. Drop a comment and tell us which of these bizarre shows you actually remember watching. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because, trust us, it gets weirder from here. Number 4, The Powers of Matthew Starr. Crashing into number 4 is The Powers of Matthew Starr, an NBC series that aired from 1982 to 1983, and tried to answer the question, what if Superman went to high school, but was also an alien prince with a government handler? The show followed Matthew Starr, played by Peter Barton, a teenager who's actually the prince of the planet Quadris. His planet was conquered by evil forces, so he and his guardian Walt, played by Louis Gossett Jr., fresh off his Officer and a Gentleman Oscar win, flee to Earth. Walt poses as Matthew's high school teacher, while secretly training him to use his alien powers, which include telekinesis, telepathy, and astral projection. Oh, and Walt reports to a mysterious government organization called the United States Interdimensional Agency, because apparently the 80s government had departments for everything, including alien refugees. What made The Powers of Matthew Starr weird was its identity crisis. The show started as a teen drama about an alien trying to fit in at Crestridge High School while developing his powers. Matthew had a girlfriend, Pam, played by Amy Steele, who didn't know his secret. He dealt with typical teenage problems like exams and social drama, except he could also read minds and move objects with his thoughts. Then something happened. Halfway through the first season, NBC panicked about the ratings and completely retooled the show. Gone was the high school setting. Instead, Matthew became a full-time government agent, going on missions with Walt to fight terrorists and enemy spies. The show transformed from alien teenager in high school to alien secret agent, and audiences were understandably confused. Peter Barton had solid screen presence, but the show's constant identity shifts made it hard to build any character momentum. One week, he's worried about asking Pam to the dance. The next, he's infiltrating a terrorist cell in Eastern Europe. Pick a lane, NBC. The Powers of Matthew Starr remains a fascinating example of network interference killing a show's potential. It's the television equivalent of changing your major 3 times and then dropping out. Number 3, Hard Time on Planet Earth. Coming in at number 3 is Hard Time on Planet Earth, a show so weird that even listing it on this countdown feels like we're testing your memory. This CBS series aired from March to June of 1989 for exactly 13 episodes, and its premise was magnificently bizarre. The show followed Jesse, an alien warrior from the planet Andromeda, who's basically their version of Conan the Barbarian. After leading a failed rebellion against his planet's oppressive government, he's sentenced to exile on Earth, which his people considered the worst planet in the galaxy, a primitive backwater full of violent, illogical beings. To monitor his rehabilitation and eventual redemption, his overlords assign him a floating orb called Control, voiced by Danny Mann, that acts as his parole officer and provides sarcastic commentary on human behavior. Jesse was played by Martin Kove, who you definitely know as John Kreese from the Karate Kid films. Watching Kreese go from sweep the leg to trying to understand why humans eat hot dogs while being followed by a talking ball is genuinely surreal. The concept was basically The Fugitive meets Mork and Mindy meets every fish out of water story, except the fish was a warrior alien sentenced to Earth prison. Each episode followed Jesse trying to survive on Earth while learning valuable lessons about compassion, humility, and why humans have so many rules about everything. Control was the show's secret weapon. The floating orb provided commentary on both Jesse's behavior and humanity's bizarre customs. It was like if Hal from 2001, a space odyssey, had to babysit a confused alien and slowly started caring about him. What made Hard Time on Planet Earth truly strange was its tone. The show tried to balance genuine science fiction concepts with sitcom-style humor and occasional action sequences. Episodes dealt with homelessness, environmental destruction, and social injustice. It was social commentary wrapped in a science fiction sitcom. CBS canceled the show after 13 episodes. Martin Covey continued his successful career, returning to the Karate Kid franchise with the Cobra Kai series. Number 2, My Mother the Car. Coming in at number 2, we have My Mother the Car, and yes, this show actually existed. This NBC sitcom aired from 1965 to 1966, which technically makes it a 60s show, not an 80s show. But we're including it because it's been consistently voted one of the worst sitcoms ever made. And 80s kids discovered it through reruns, TV Guide articles about terrible television, and parents who would say, "Remember when TV was so bad they made a show about a talking car that was someone's mom?" The premise defied logic, physics, and good taste. Dave Crabtree, played by Jerry Van Dyke, is a suburban lawyer who buys a 1928 Porter touring car and discovers that it's his deceased mother, reincarnated as an automobile. His mother, voiced by Ann Sothern, communicates through the car radio and helps him navigate life while also being, a car. Jerry Van Dyke, Dick Van Dyke's younger brother, famously turned down the role of Gilligan on Gilligan's Island to star in My Mother the Car, which has to be one of the worst career decisions in television history. He later called it the biggest mistake of his life, watching Gilligan's Island become a massive hit, while his show about a talking mom car became a punchline. The show tried to mine comedy from Dave having to explain to his wife Barbara, played by Maggie Pierce, why he was so attached to this old car and spent so much time talking to it. She thought he was having a midlife crisis. He couldn't tell her it was his mother without sounding insane. Meanwhile, Captain Manzini, played by Avery Schreiber, was a car collector who constantly tried to buy the Porter, creating ongoing conflict. What made My Mother the Car truly weird was how earnestly it played the concept. This wasn't a parody or a satirical take on family sitcoms. It was a straight-up family comedy that expected audiences to accept that reincarnation was real and specifically resulted in people becoming vintage automobiles. The show never questioned its own premise, which made it even more bizarre. The writing tried to wring humor from the situation. Mother would give Dave advice through the radio. She'd start the engine when she was happy and stall out when she was upset. She'd comment on his driving and offer life lessons from beyond the automotive grave. It was a mother-son relationship where one party was upholstered. Critics absolutely savaged the show. TV Guide called it the worst show in television history, a title it held for decades. Audiences tuned out quickly, and NBC canceled it after 1 season and 30 episodes. Jerry Van Dyke spent years trying to live down his association with the show, though he later had a successful career resurgence on Coach in the 90s. Ann Sothern, a respected actress from Hollywood's golden age, provided the voice of Mother with as much dignity as anyone could bring to playing a sentient car. She made the best of an impossible situation, which is probably all you can ask from someone who agreed to voice a talking automobile. My Mother the Car remains the gold standard for terrible sitcom concepts. It's been referenced in countless worst of lists, academic studies on television failure, and pop culture discussions about network desperation. The show proved that not every concept should make it past the pitch meeting, and that sometimes the weirdest idea in the room should stay in the room. Number 1, Homebrew. And finally claiming the number 1 spot on our countdown of the weirdest sitcoms 80s kids can't forget, we have Homebrew, a show so obscure, so weird, and so quickly forgotten that you probably think we're making it up. This ABC sitcom was scheduled to premiere in 1990, but never actually aired, existing only as a completed pilot that has become the stuff of television legend. The premise was simple, but baffling. The show followed a working-class family, the Kellys, who decided to start a home brewing operation to make extra money. The father, Tom, played by Kenneth Kimmins, was a laid-off factory worker who discovered a passion for making beer in his basement. His wife, Mary, played by Farrah Fork, supported the venture while juggling her own job and raising their teenage kids. Yes, you read that correctly. ABT greenlit a family sitcom about home brewing in 1990, right in the middle of Just Say No and Nancy Reagan's war on drugs. The network thought what America really wanted was to watch a family make alcohol in their basement for profit, with laughs. The show was created by Bruce Helford, who would later create The Drew Carey Show and The Connors, so he clearly had talent. But homebrew was a concept so tone-deaf to its era that even ABC, the network that aired Full House and Family Matters, looked at the finished pilot and said, maybe not. According to those who've seen the pilot, the show tried to be a blue-collar family comedy in the vein of Roseanne, focusing on economic hardship and the American dream. The Kellys weren't alcoholics or party animals. They were desperate people trying to make ends meet by brewing beer, which they'd then sell to local bars and friends. It was supposed to be heartwarming and funny. Here's why it never aired. ABC realized that showing a family making alcohol at home, involving their teenage children in the operation, and treating it as a wholesome family business was a public relations nightmare waiting to happen. This was the era of Mothers Against Drunk Driving gaining national prominence and increased awareness of underage drinking. A sitcom about a family brewery business landed with all the grace of a lead balloon at a helium convention. The network quietly shelved the pilot and paid off the cast and crew. Kenneth Kimmins continued working in television. Farrah Fork went on to star in Wings, where she played a helicopter pilot, a considerably less controversial occupation than home brewer. Homebrew has become a holy grail for television collectors and bad TV enthusiasts. The pilot exists somewhere in ABC's archives, but it's never been officially released. Those who've seen bootleg copies report that it's actually competently made, with decent performances and solid sitcom writing. The concept was just so fundamentally misguided that no amount of good execution could save it. What makes Homebrew the weirdest sitcom 80s kids can't forget, even though most never saw it, is that it represents peak television desperation. Networks in the late 80s and early 90s were throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. Most shows were conventional family sitcoms or workplace comedies. Homebrew was the one that made executives realize there were limits to what audiences would accept. The show's legacy lives on in its television lore, discussed on podcasts, YouTube videos, and websites dedicated to forgotten television. It's proof that sometimes the weirdest shows aren't the ones that failed on air. They're the ones that never made it to air at all. And there you have it, 11 of the weirdest sitcoms that 80s kids can't forget, even if some of them desperately want to. From robot daughters and alien princes to reincarnated car mothers and homebrewing families, the 80s tried everything to capture audiences' attention. Some shows succeeded despite their weirdness. Most crashed and burned spectacularly, but all of them left an impression on the generation that watched them. Which of these bizarre shows do you actually remember? Did you watch Small Wonder every Saturday morning? Did you catch Manimal before NBC pulled the plug? Were you one of the few people who saw the powers of Matthew Starr transform from teen drama to spy thriller? Drop a comment and let us know. Because honestly, some of these feel like collective fever dreams, and we need confirmation that they actually existed. If you enjoyed this trip down television's weirdest memory lane, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got more forgotten flops, canceled classics, and bizarre 80s television coming your way. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss when we drop part 2. Because trust us, there are plenty more weird shows we didn't even get to today. Until next time, this is Remember When, reminding you that sometimes the strangest shows are the ones we remember most fondly. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.